Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this amazing discussion where me and Kyle Entertainment are going to be talking about the movie that came out in 2024.
The greatest movie of all time, EliteAri, The Great Challenges, of course.
Of course.
Which I have talked about previously. I've watched previously. I rewatched it for this little discussion. EliteAri has listened to me talk about this before on my silly movie night thing that I did at the end of last year.
Yes.
And you were just so enthralled by my great tellings that you said, I've got to watch this movie.
It did sound very interesting. Now, I don't remember anything specific about it, actually.
That I said?
Yeah. I do remember the relationships being like a metaphor. I mean, tennis being a metaphor for relationships. I remember that. So going into this, I was like, okay, I understand. It's a smarter movie than it seems, okay?
No.
But that's basically...
Yippee.
Yeah.
Now, also, you love this director's other movie, right? Bones or something?
Oh, this was the Bones and All guy.
Yeah.
I actually completely forgot about that. But yeah, I did like that movie. That was pretty great.
Do you, now that you've realized this, see a lot of through line?
I see exactly what you mean. I even remember you saying it, that they're both metaphors, or allegories.
I haven't seen that fucking movie, but that's how you explained it to me.
Yeah, that one is an allegory for, I don't remember what it was.
Love or something?
It was something like that, yeah. But yeah.
Okay, I'm interested maybe. Luca Guadagnino. Because he had two movies come out last year. The other one was called Queer, with the guy from Knives Out, the detective guy.
Yep.
It's James Bond.
Yep.
That I wanted to go see. I think it's still in theaters, and you can't stream it yet. Call Me By Your Name is another movie.
I've heard of that one.
Suspiria, which I know is a remake of an old movie, I'm pretty sure. But it's like a violent movie, I think. This great movie, not violent at all, Larry. Can you believe it?
Well, yeah, true.
She does slap and spit on Patrick, though.
And she does injure her knee or whatever.
Oh, yes. Yeah. A very gruesome knee injury thing. You love it.
We'll see.
I guess you should start us off, because I gave it 5 stars. I said I loved it. Hold on. Shut your mouth. I'm going to speculate on what EliteAri thinks.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Now, obviously, this is trepidatious, chat, because I love challenges, because, I just love relationships and love stories and all the sort. Does EliteAri like these things? Maybe sometimes. I can't really remember, but I'm thinking not. So, he could say, this movie was pretty good. I respected it, but it wasn't for me. He could just say it was trash, because he says that when I like things sometimes, just to spite me.
Sometimes,
Or he could say, gee willikers, 5 stars. We don't know what he's going to say.
Well, I guess just to say it straight away, this is a fantastic movie.
That's not for me.
However, it's a little confusing, okay? So I need you to clarify some things for me.
That's good. I like this. I like explaining things to your leader. It's my favorite type.
I really like this movie, but there is a few things where I'm like, I wasn't exactly sure what was going on in the relationship dynamics, where I'm like, if I really understood it, like on a rewatch, I think this could be like easily a 5.
It is. It is told out of order. Well, it's like
a little bit.
It's the tennis game starts.
I mean, it spans the whole movie, right?
Yeah.
But my more confusion thing is about who was cheating on who and what
time.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm so smart. I'm pretty sure I got it all the first time, but I did rewatch it yesterday. I was sitting on the couch. He was fucking with lights or something. He spends all day doing this shit.
Yep, absolutely.
So I was over there. No, he was buying some lights, I think, or something.
True.
So yeah, it's fresh in my memory. How long ago did you watch this movie? Like 2 days ago? 3 days?
Yeah, maybe 3 days ago. Yeah.
I guess we should start with the clarifying stuff then, maybe. So, hold on, let me recap. Okay, so we start off. The movie starts with the ending tennis scene. It's like encompasses the whole movie. I guess we shouldn't start there. So originally, they're all very good junior tennis players. Art and Patrick go to a tennis college together, like a boarding school. I think they've graduated from that or something. But they are still juniors, and I think they're all in high school, or probably like the last year, because they're all talking about going to college.
They are, yeah.
Tashi doesn't go to their school, but at the Junior American Open, I'm assuming, because tennis is opens, right? We know everything about tennis. We do. Novak Djokovic or something. That's a tennis player.
Indeed.
The Australian Open,
right? Roger Federer.
That's the guy. The Australian Open is one of the big tennis competitions, because they talk about the Grand Slam a lot. And now I know this because people talk about Grand Slams in wrestling. It's when you win all of the big competitions. So I think it's like the US Open, the Australian Open, the Wimbledon. I don't know if they call it Open, but that's in England.
The Wimbledon Cup or something.
Something like that. Yeah. And there's one other one. But and Art just has to win the US Open before he gets his Grand Slam or something. And Patrick has become not too good of a tennis player. But he was originally, and this is actually a very funny thing, because this is true in all sports, especially when I did junior sport, and in most things. It's like, the number one guy in like under 16s never makes it for whatever reason. Like Number 25 is going to become the greatest tennis player of all time, but for whatever reason, like it's like a blooming too early thing, or they lose interest or something. They repeatedly say that throughout the movie, which is funny. But Tashi is this big, already like a superstar, I guess, because she's like got like they want to do ad campaigns for her with Adidas, and they go to a party, and that's how they meet. And then she basically teases them, and then makes them have a tennis match basically for who gets her number, which Patrick wins. So initially, she is dating kind of Patrick. But she's also going to college, where Art is going college.
At Stanford or something, yeah,
something like that. But Patrick doesn't go to college. He goes pro immediately, which is another thing that in sport where it's like, oh, should you like wait or should you go pro immediately? Most Australian sports, you go pro immediately. Just because we don't have too many people, I'm assuming. In American sport, obviously, you do college football and I think maybe not college basketball, but then you have to get an education to be able to do it. So you debut in the big league at like 25, but in the rugby league, 17, some people debut.
So at this point, you're saying in the relationship, there is a relationship between Patrick and Tashi, right?
Well, because he shows up at the college at some point and there's like a thing about like, what are we? Kind of, but they're dating.
Who shows up? Patrick.
He shows up at the
Yes,
this is right before she hurts her knee. So it's like they're sleeping together. Obviously, they're long distance if they're anything, but it's not too general thing. And it's obvious that Art is very much, because this is also a thing throughout the movie, is like Art is in love with her, but Patrick maybe isn't, but does like her, and it's kind of ambiguous what she feels about anything.
Yep.
But then, obviously, Art is weaseling his way in a lot and, like, undermining him.
Absolutely, yeah.
But the way the movie's framed is we're supposed to, like, the first relationship we see is her and Art. So it's like a subversion sort of like, because the whole time you're like, this Patrick guy, you know, what's he doing? Get in the way of this relationship we know is going to happen. But then you kind of find out that Art is actually, like, the slimy one. But also, it's, like, messy. There's not, like, a too big of a moral judgment being passed.
Okay, that's...
But there's also no cheating.
Okay.
He just waits until later. And it's not like he gets with her immediately. He waits a little bit. And then he like does it. That's like the end of Patrick's relationship with both of them until he sees them again at an US Open later where Tashi does cheat. And then obviously the night before she cheats.
And this is when you're saying the night before is the thing in the car, right?
The red stuff, yeah.
Okay. So just to clarify, you're saying the last time they saw each other before that was after she injured her knee, right?
No. Okay, there's one more in the middle where it's like 2003 or something, where it's like that's like 13 years later, but then 8 years later they sleep together when she walks past her in the window.
Oh, okay, yes.
Yeah, and
at that point that would be cheating on Art, right?
Yes, they're married at that point, I think already. Yeah, because remember she sees the ring and she's like, oh, it's the grandmother's, and there's a grandma thing that's like a running thing.
Okay, interesting.
So yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, I think I have a better understanding now. Okay.
As far as I understand.
So that will feed into one point I have about a dynamic. Yes. Okay.
I guess the biggest thing is, well, there's character motivations, there's what it means.
I mean, I have some general
thematic
thoughts about this.
Yeah, probably you should go first.
The first thing is, I wonder if you agree with this or not. To me, this felt like weirdly low budget. Like it kind of felt like, I couldn't tell if it was just because it's centering around like a few sets or something, or maybe because there's only three characters, or I don't know what it was, but it felt like,
it felt like a college movie, not like a movie made in college, but a movie about college.
To me, this felt like it would be strange if this was released in the theaters, like in terms of the vibe of like, I feel like it's not a cinematic movie at all. It just felt like
cinematic shots.
What, I guess it depends on
the tennis ones, right? Like the ball following the thingy, or
they're very experimental. I don't know if they're like, when I think it's cinematic, I think grand or whatever, I guess. And this is not a grand.
There's a lot of people in that that tennis match.
That is true, I guess. But I feel like you could, I don't know what it is. It just gives that vibe, I guess.
There's a defining thing with me usually is like the sound effects, weirdly enough. And it had very movie sound effects, so it felt cinematic to me in that sense.
Yeah.
It's always weird because when you do go to the cinema, it just must be like how well the speakers are. But there is always like it's always more noticeable to me in the trailers where there's like the clicking of the gun sounds so different when you're in a theater, or the footsteps or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. That was a weird point, but
yeah. Yeah, I guess. Well, then my next thing is directly related to that, which is,
did Bones feel like that, or?
Thinking in retrospect, it doesn't feel like this, because that is that's basically a traveling movie. So there's a lot of different locations you visit and stuff. But that definitely does feel low budget, I would say that, but not in the anti-cinematic kind of way.
There is a thing, and it was another descriptively, well, we're going to get into descriptive realism, I think, because I think that is like the centerpiece of what I like about the movie. But in the like the areas they're in, like they're not very flashy, and that's how like a lot of sport is. And I think a lot of people think it's more flashy than it is. Like in the first, because there's a scene at the beginning where he's playing tennis against like this really young kid who's like gobsmacked by him, but he loses because it's his first game back after his injury or whatever. And like the shed, they're like the backstage area they're waiting in, it looks like shit. Like there's like it's the wall sucks and they're sitting on shitty chairs, and I'm like, oh, that's real, brother. I remember those shitty rooms.
Yeah.
Little athletics, and there's like fucking grandstands that are going to fall down if you step on them too much. It's like, oh, this is crazy. It's not flashy. So I mean, that's probably not what you're talking about, but there is like a...
Well, even the match itself is not very flashy in that it is a small crowd. It's not like a stadium of like you're watching them at their big like US
They
Open
never have a stadium scene, that is true.
Yeah, so it feels very local.
Like when we go to the US Open that one time, because he walks in and he sees them training. It's like there's like afternoon and it's raining or something and there's no one there.
But
I guess we do see vision of his one game at the beginning, but it was on like the TV, so you could very easily CG in.
That is true.
Bullshit in.
The
crowd.
Directing was very cool. Okay, especially like that final stretch. Like
I think
it's
tennis,
very cool.
There was definitely a possibility in you thinking that like that was bad. I think it rides the line a little bit.
I mean, specifically, there's like the under the court shots are really cool when you're like bouncing on the thing. There's obviously the point of view ball shot, so cool.
Okay, I like them both too.
Well, it all comes down to if you're gonna like that final scene, which to me it's the best scene it's like way better than the whole rest of the movie. It's so good.
I don't remember if you remember me saying this or if you even said this in the original. Originally, the ending didn't. I was like slightly disappointed with it. I think this is my tangent shit. I think one of the bigger draws, there's like three, but one of the biggest draws for the movie for me was that I couldn't tell what was going to happen. And apparently that's a very big thing for me because there's almost a will they, won't they in everything. It's like, who will she end up with at the end? Will their marriage run through? Like, and then there's obviously the twists and turns about the cheating and how it's framed in the different relationships. So it's like, okay. And then there's also the stakes where she has told Art that if he loses, she will leave him and stuff like that. And then it's like, who's going to win? Like thematically, who would win this? I think because you initially think of Patrick as sort of the bad guy, very initially, like at the very beginning, because it's like, oh, this is our relationship and he's butting in. But then he's like downtrodden and he's like living in his car and shit like that. So then he almost becomes like the underdog guy and you're like rooting for him. But then you're like, it's like an unsatisfying if either one of them were to win. And obviously that's kind of the point of the movie because, actually, if you slow it down, it depends. Like Art hits the ball down, which means he would win, but he also ends up over the net, which means I think he would have got disqualified. But it really doesn't.
I didn't even consider it. That doesn't even factor into it. I didn't even, Like to me, the appeal of I guess we can talk about it now. The appeal of the final scene is that
they all get what they want.
No, that I haven't thought about much about Tashi in this final scene, but when I'm thinking of the two guys,
that's the defining part for me. At the end.
To me, the thing about it's a message about how relationships are complex and multifaceted, and you can both love and hate someone at the same time. And sometimes the moment of a relation, like living moment to moment in a relationship, is more important than the grander kind of vision of it. Which is like when he does like the thing touching the ball or whatever and the music starts, which we're going to talk about the music, but when the music starts, it feels like we don't care about anything else. It is this current moment in this relationship is what we're caring about. And it brings us together, which is what I thought was I really got emotionally impacted by it. Like, this is really cool.
I think that's kind of it for me, but it's kind of not. I think the bigger thing is, there's kind of what do the characters want? Like the kind of thing that everybody comes away saying and that I've seen said a lot is that Art loves Tashi, Patrick loves Art, like he wants to be with Art, and then Tashi loves tennis. And in the end, I guess in the end you would say that Art doesn't get what he wants unless you're kind of interpreting that he won and therefore Tashi would stay with him. But obviously they embrace at the end and Tashi screams like she screams at the beginning. Yep. Which is the most impactful thing at the end for me.
Interesting.
Because I think that's like the most, it's kind of the most interesting theme it's like the most interesting part about life. Is like Tashi has the monologue at the beginning. She's playing tennis and they're watching her play tennis. And they're jerking each other off physically. Not physically, metaphorically. And she has the rally with that girl. And then at the end, when she wins, she like screams. And it's like, and then there's a whole monologue about what that's about later, which there's sort of different interpretations about. And obviously she does the same scream at the end. And it's also like a part about moving on, because originally she did it in tennis and then she's very sad that she can never play tennis again, but then she realizes she can get that feeling by watching tennis at the end. So it's sort of like a full circle thing for her. it's basically like what is like the purpose of life is sort of these one-off moments of being locked in or whatever, and then feeling sort of the adrenaline, which I find very relatable. And there's moments and aspects of that in everything. Like even recording sometimes you'll have bad recordings, sometimes you'll have good recordings, and sometimes you'll have really good recordings. And it'll be like, holy shit, like what was that? That was great. Even that when I'm working on videos or something, like it's usually, because sometimes I span them out in hour-long segments, and I'll be at the end of a segment, and I'll be like, oh, there's like 50 minutes left, and I'll have remembered entirely what the point is I wanted to make in this movie, and I'll in this script, and I'll have like figured it out, and like more information's coming that's like even better and making this idea even better. And that sort of rush is like insane, and it's like, oh, that's why I would ever do this mostly miserable process. Obviously, sport is a mostly massively miserable process to get to sort of game day. It's like, and this is shown at the beginning with art, where it's like he has to wake up at 5:30 every day. He has to get up and not eat what he wants and drink shitty protein shakes or whatever the hell, and then he's got to go train. And his wife is his coach, and all this is very complicated. But sort of the thrill from tennis, which he doesn't get from tennis, which is kind of the point, that he sort of gets it from the relationship. Hey, shut up! I muted it. The I don't know. What was I saying? The Tashi stuff.
Yeah, okay. I would ask you then. So there is clearly a metaphor going on here, an allegory with the meaning of tennis, or a tennis match, for instance.
Sort of, yeah.
Well, I was going to ask, what do you think that is? Because I have a interpretation.
Well, there's obviously the joke that everybody makes when like somebody who doesn't really like tennis watches a tennis game is like, oh, they're moaning. Isn't that funny? Like there's a million comedy bits, I'm sure. I'm pretty sure I remember a Family Guy one. It sounds like sex noises, bro. So obviously, and grunting is very visceral and stuff, and obviously that happens in sex, apparently. I don't know. So there's like a definitive thing of like, is the sex, is tennis a metaphor for sex? And obviously we see Art and Patrick playing tennis all the time. And obviously, but that's really not it. It's sort of like, this is like a very erotic movie, obviously. So to tie that to tennis sort of makes sense in a vague thematic idea like that. But outside of that, I don't think tennis is really, I do like the tennis porn in the movie, not as in porn, but like, tennis as a concept is it's a very distinct sport. It has a distinct look. It has a distinct appeal. It has a distinct way of, it seems classy for whatever reason. Like golf seems classy in a different way than tennis. Like golf is like country club classy, though they are playing literally at a country club in this, so maybe that's the same thing. But like the hats and the skirts and I don't know, they're not like, the best tennis player in the world isn't a 6'4" jacked guy. It's like this little guy that looks like Art, basically, who's in it's a very different appeal to like, I don't know, football, where it's always like the big guys or something. So I don't think there is a specific, I don't know, I don't really have a specific tennis is this type thing.
Yeah, I guess, okay, for me then, firstly, okay, let me just say it. My understanding is that tennis, whenever tennis is referenced in this, it is an allegory for a youthful relationship or a passionate relationship.
Yes.
That's the allegory I see, which is like whenever you're playing tennis, you're engaging in your youthful kind of passionate elements of a relationship.
Because you do have to retire eventually.
Yeah, that's what they're talking about. Like, oh, I want to have one more match before the eventual retirement. Now, however, I also think there's links into when the music is being played in the movie, because I think the music is, I don't quite remember when it's played, like what specific scenes, but you know the song I'm talking about, like the engaging kind of music. I feel like that is meant to indicate that we're having a moment of like, this is a passionate relationship happening here. Or like, these are the what do they say, the spurs of youth or whatever? Like I don't know what you say, but the big
passions of youth or something.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Because there's also, you're doing the sports narrative again. Like, a lot of the most popular sports are team sports. Whereas tennis is just 1 versus 1, right? So there is, they do doubles.
That is true. They played doubles at the beginning.
They did, yes. But usually, especially on the highest level, like doubles is like the fun thing that's on the funny day, and then the serious stuff is the single stuff. But it's like an interaction, right? So I think at the more basic level, it's just like people need to interact, and it's kind of like this is obviously a competition, right? So it's like them going back and forth. They both want the same thing. Yeah, I guess. Just quickly on the music, and before I forget to do it, the music is by the 9 Inch Nails guys, who have transitioned into, you probably don't know.
I have no idea. I know they were on like some tap to win whatever app on the phone.
Maybe.
Or whatever.
Yeah, they're a famous like metal band basically, and I think they kind of stopped doing albums and really just do film scores. I know they've done others, but I bring this up because they're doing the soundtrack for the next Naughty Dog game.
Oh wow,
for
okay.
Intergalactic, which is very exciting, especially after this. I'll just look them up on Letterboxd and see what other movies they did. I feel like I might want to say they did Interstellar, but I feel like that's
No,
not
that was
true.
Hans Zimmer.
Oh
or
yeah,
whatever,
yeah. But yeah, what were we talking about?
It was just metaphors and music.
We love music, we love metaphors, but yeah, it's like saying human connection is like reductive because it's not that. It's something slightly between that, I think. But
Sure.
yeah.
Okay, excellent. Well, I had one note on the directing, one what we didn't talk about. It's just an example of there was a particular shot where it was like Tashi is in the foreground and she's like looking at the court, and then there's like Art here and Patrick here, and it's like blurred and like in focus or whatever. It was like, this is really cool. I don't know how they did that, but
I thought that was like, I feel like you could do that in Premiere. So that was one of the ones where I was like, oh.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it before, and I was like, this is kind of cool.
Yeah. It did feel YouTube video-y a little bit though.
Yeah,
like thumbnail-y, definitely.
I think it's experimental, okay? Which I liked. But yeah.
Maybe they haven't done any other soundtracks.
Okay. Well, I got no idea, but
because it's Trent Reznor, that's the guy. I want to make sure he's from Nine Inch Nails. Yes, he is from Nine Inch Nails.
Well done, impressive.
Movies: Challenges, Lost Highway, Queer, which is his other movie that came out. The Social Network, I think. Is
okay, that's kind
of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Soul, the
Okay.
Pixar movie, Gone Girl, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from 2023, and The Great Intergalactic, because Neil Druckmann gets the biggest guys, you know.
Okay, so my notes are a bit
Bones and
sporadic
All.
beyond this. They did Bones and All. Okay, that's kind of
Watchmen, the TV show, apparently.
These are all pretty good. Everything you're listing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a note on the final scene. We've already talked about it. Let me just see. Is there any the music indicating the game is starting, ending on a hug? Okay, we've already talked about that. Again, this is completely out of order, but I did really like the scene where we get the first flashback. I don't know if it's the first flashback, but when they're first approaching Tashi for the first time, I really like
Very
that.
cute, yeah.
Like the dynamic is very interesting.
This is like the massive. So I sort of said there's like three things. So there's the not being able to tell what was going to happen. Descriptive realism, and I can't remember what the third thing was. The descriptive realism is like, I think the dialogue is incredible in this movie. I think everything they say, it's kind of like the Mad Men feeling, where it's like, oh, everything they say is like clever and sort of insightful, and like, what's the combination of those two words that I'm looking for? It's like
Profound. I don't know.
a little bit, but it's like almost a commentary on conversations in a way. It's maybe it's meta. It's not.
Sure.
It's meta in terms of conversations, not in terms of movies. But it feels like it's somebody who. This is the worst thing I could say to describe this point. It feels like something I would say. It's kind of what I always say about Mad Men and what I say about this, where it's like, it feels like it's a sarcastic, self-aware thing of like, I don't know, there are people that talk like this, and it is clever when you talk like this. Usually in real life, you like fail to talk like this a lot of the time. But it's like, we would have to watch a scene. I remember in that scene, when they're on the beach smoking or whatever, smoking's so cool, don't you think, Larry?
Not at
all. Isn't it cool? And he's smoking later, and Tashi says, "I don't fucking smoke," and tells him to fuck off. It's great. There's a lot of little callbacks like that I noticed the second time, where like almost everything they say comes back later. But anyway, don't let me get off topic. Saying something. Oh, they're on the beach, and Art says like, oh, it's just a little back and forth where she's like, I don't want to be a homewrecker. And then Art says, we don't live together or something. But then Patrick says, it's an open relationship. And it's like cute, because obviously she's implying, you're two little gay boys. And then Art's like, no. But Patrick's like a funny, dismissive no that also indicates you can still come in. It's like a very clever line delivery.
Yeah, sure.
There's that's like clever, but there's like other lines that represent other things. I should have written them down while I was watching them. But yeah, there's something. The dialogue is very much what I want, I guess. Which is usually something. Whenever I bring up dialogue, I'm usually complaining about it, right? So I guess it's good to point out a positive thing that isn't Black Lagoon or fucking Mad Men.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember any dialogue specifically except for the my two little white boys or whatever. I was like, oh, that, and I also remembered you saying that. I think
we can talk about that later.
Okay.
And Zendaya is an actress later.
Oh boy. Okay, yeah.
What were we just talking about? The dialogue, something. I had a point.
It's gone.
It's
At the beach.
The beach. No, it was building off that.
What a shame.
do you think this dialogue is like quippy? Because it's
I don't
partially
remember.
that.
Nothing stood out to me as quippy.
Like, what is quippy to you? Like, Guardians of the Galaxy, I feel like, is what invented that word, and like film talking about Lex.
or Iron Man or something, yeah.
Yes. I think it's like that though. But like better.
Not really. Yeah, maybe.
that.
I mean, yeah, it was. I wouldn't compare it to that. I don't know.
It's like when
I mean, the example you just gave kind of sounds quippy, but I didn't get that.
it's
vibe
like
at all.
fast. It's like
Sure. Yeah.
it's like I'm paying attention and I thought of something.
I think
like-
witty is the word you're looking for.
Yes, kind of. But it's like there's like a thing you should say in this moment, but this is like a clever thing making fun of the thing I should say in this moment, where it's like, oh, it's an open relationship. And that's even, it's like there's even more layers to why that line of dialogue is good, because we don't really know if they are together at that point, like even the boys. So it's like a speculative thing also. I don't know, it's very good to me. So what did I say? The dialogue, maybe I was counting dialogue as the third thing, then descriptive realism, then unpredictability. Obviously, there's a lot of like romance, erotic stuff that I like in most things. I look for in most things. There's like, most of my favorite things have that. Mad Men a little bit. Obviously, Portrait of a Lady on Fire. I guess that's probably the
House of the Dragon.
example. House of the Dragon, with the old Kristen Cole scene. True, but yeah, those types of things. I would assume you never really care about that stuff, so I don't know how you felt about that in this movie.
It was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was fine. Like, I didn't have any. There was no, for instance, a sex scene where I'm like, oh, this is going too long.
Well, there is no sex scenes in this movie.
Well, no
actually.
intimate scenes, I guess, where I was like, oh, this is going on for too long. One of them did go on for too long, but intentionally so, and it was uncomfortable. And all three are kissing. And I'm like,
that didn't go on long enough.
I couldn't look. I was like, oh, it's a sir. I can't.
No, it's so great.
God,
she makes him kiss and then she makes the face.
That was good. Yeah, that was really good. But the build-up was like, it's so uncomfortable to watch. Oh, God.
It is,
but in a good way.
No, this is another thing where the relationships. This is more of the descriptively real thing, where the relationships are. There's like a way movies do things, right? Where it's usually a little bit over dramatic to real life. Then there's like real life, and then there's like the fake real life we want to believe in, and that's where this movie like lives. It is like a Mad Men thing. There's like an example, like the boys. In a traditional movie, obviously, and this is like subtextually what's going on, the boys are in competition for the girl, kind of. That's kind of the baseline. Them still being friends is like the interesting part. Obviously, eventually it boils over and they're not friends anymore. But them being like, it feels real. I feel like I've known dudes that would be like this, where it's like they both want the same girl. They like are together all the time. And then they're like very open about like, oh, if one of us can get her, the other one will like wait in the bathroom or something like that. I feel like I've met, and I think this was kind of, the joke would be here, boarding school boys, they're all like this or something. They're all like half gay and something, if you go to an all-boys school or something.
Which, did you?
I did not, of course.
Neither did I. Yeah, I went to a Catholic school there.
Basically the same thing, you know what I'm saying? So there's, it's very interesting, and I guess the word I'm looking for is sort of a mature way to look at things. And there's scenes that play out, and it's almost like the Fujimoto thing of like, they sort of are doing a meta thing, but then just still doing the thing. Like there's even the scene in the sauna, which is like the last confrontation verbally we get from them. And I think the only confrontation verbally we get between the boys after Tashi gets injured. Where the scene is obviously they're having a fight. And it's sort of like I fucked your girl, but she's my girl, kill yourself type thingy. Where I think the way, like at that point, I think we found out that he slept with her the night before, or at least in Atlanta, which is at the US Open stuff. I think it was in Atlanta. Why do I think Atlanta? Now I'm second guessing.
They probably said it.
The scene, obviously, you should sort of feel bad for Art because he's like getting cheated on, kind of. But then the way he plays the scene is so perfect, because you could easily frame him, and there's even the scene later where he's like in bed with the kid. But I think the never moralizing is like a massive component to this movie that I love a lot. Where it's like, that scene happens, and in any other movie, that's the scene where Tashi breaks down crying, thinking, what have I done? She pulls her hair out, she jumps off the fucking balcony or something. How could I cheat on my great husband or something? That's not what the movie is interested in at all. She kind of looks at it, she's probably regretful in the moment, but then she's like, okay. Then the scene in the sauna then obviously should be like Art being sad about it, or he should like get his comeuppance. But it's completely different, where he's like mean in that scene, but he's so, like he should be the little, like he's also framed as like the cuck boy throughout the thing. Like he sucks up to her, he's like a simp, but he gets her in the end, but she actually sleeps. Like, it's like, don't be a simp because she doesn't actually respect you. She'll cheat on you with your friend or whatever. But that's not how he's framed at all. And repeatedly, it should be like, oh, even in scenes where it should show his simpery, it's like there's always a sternness there that feels like a real person, where nobody is actually like a 100% simp for this person. They have motivations and things that they want, and like his love for her might override these things, but he's still like, he's like stands up for himself in that scene very well, where he's like, what the fuck do I have to talk to you about or whatever, when he's like that. And even then he's like, I'm not scared of you, like kill yourself, you're nothing, I'm just visiting, you live here, etc., etc. But also, this is another thing I've written down somewhere, none of the characters are ever allowed to have mic drop moments, because he says that, like, what the fuck else would I have to talk to you about besides tennis? Because there's also the thing in the movie where it's like, are we talking about tennis right now, or sex, obviously, or relationships? And the answer is usually they're not talking about tennis. Sometimes they are. Afterwards, Patrick gets a kind of one-liner afterwards. So it's like, because that's kind of the thing, like in movies, like you drop the mic, you leave. But in real life, you sort of have to sit with it, and you don't just get to walk out and leave, or you might trip over or something. And I think that is a very distinct aspect of the movie, where it's like the characters have archetypes. Like Patrick is the down in his luck rogue. He's like Spike Spiegel or something, but he's actually the cool one and the one the ladies like. And then Art's put together, he's so successful. And he's a simp boy, but like, oh my goodness. And then Tashi's like the mean girl who doesn't care about these dumb boys. But none of these things are actually true. Like they're all, they even play those archetypes the whole movie, I guess, until the very end and like the last shot. And the scenes function like that, but there's like nuance to all of it that's very interesting in a bunch of scenes. I guess I probably have examples in my notes somewhere.
Yeah.
But I don't know, did I say anything there?
Yeah, you said a lot there.
I'm so smart.
And I'm not going to have anything to say about it, but Art, I think one element that you haven't touched on is maybe not the simpery, the quietness, I guess. Like he's not as outgoing or whatever as Patrick. I don't think that's necessarily the simp stuff, but it's like... Like, for instance, in the first scene when they're on the... Well, I don't know if it's the first scene, but at the beach, it's like... The beach, okay. Tashi... Or maybe not on the beach. Maybe just like when they're first
cool there. They both seem
well,
really
that's
cool.
the thing. Tashi is like... We see it from her perspective, kind of, where we're cutting to see both of them from her eyes. And it looks like she's looking more at
Patrick.
Art. No, I think at Art. But he's not saying anything in return, but Patrick is.
Yeah. Patrick is much better at conversation and like the quippiness.
Yeah, but her attention, at least in my memory, it seemed like her attention was more on Art. Or at least we got more shots of him, but maybe because he just didn't say anything and Patrick was talking, so the shots of him were longer or something. But that's the dynamic, I guess.
There's like such an interesting, like, again, this just seems like a descriptively real thing to me. Like, Tashi's like, before she knows them, she's like encouraging the Art because he's like the worst tennis player, and it's obvious that he's gonna lose or something. And she says like, oh, you know, you could beat him, right? And it's like a thing of like, I feel like there's situations where I've been that guy and like getting encouraged by a girl on the side or something, but like the girl always ends up with the other guy, and that's like a very descriptively like, and it's like an incel farm thing. I don't know if I've ever been in this position, or I've just seen people in this position, or this is just a movie trope or something, where it's like she's encouraging the guy because that's like the nice thing to do. That's like what a good person would do, right? Like the underdog, you can go out there and try your best and maybe you'd beat him. But like her actually being more interested in the other one or ending up with him is like this is like an incel ad for like, you're always this guy over here. You should hate women because even if they pretend to be nice to you, they actually hate you. But she is actually being nice. Like both things are true. I think Tashi's character and Tashi's perspective sort of drives the movie in the way it's portrayed, and for it not to feel like a bad portrayal of a woman in sort of that misogynistic angle. Now, obviously, I feel like there was a lot of misogyny towards this character, and there would be like people being like, she's for the streets, brother, she's a whore or something because she sleeps with both of them or whatever. And obviously when the movie first came out and the trailer first came out, the big meme was like everybody, like Tom Holland was trending because everybody was calling him a cuck.
That is one thing I knew about this movie. Yeah. And I don't understand why, but yeah.
Well, just because two boys were kissing her in a movie,
yeah.
In a yes. And that sort of plays into the insecurity because the movie is like obviously more mature than that, and it's past that. Like the cheating is not a big deal. But obviously it's a very like, it's like everybody cares about cheating, right? It's like the softest topic in the world, or not softest topic. What do you call that when it's
easiest,
touchiest topic in the world?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like everybody gets super mad about this because it's like everybody's worst nightmare, and it's like it's like everybody's worst nightmare is probably getting murdered, but you're probably not going to get murdered, but like the cheating rate is like 50% or something in your life. So it's like everybody's biggest fear that actually happens. But then another descriptive of the real thing is like the fear of it usually manifests it happening, because the fear of it usually manifests in controlling behavior that will drive somebody away from you, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. It's very interesting. I think Tashi is in some way the defining character of the movie. And then there's also the, sometimes I'm like, is Zendaya even a good actress? I'm not sure. I think in the second watch, I definitely came away thinking she was. In the first watch, I did have my doubts. But then you indicated you had something to say about that. So.
Yeah, the only thing I have to say is a more general thing about casting. It feels like to me these three actors were cast, well, Patrick is a bit of an exception actually, now that I think about it, but it feels like they were cast for the younger flashbacks. It feels to me very strange that Zendaya and whoever plays Art, that they have like a kid who's like 8 years old or whatever. Like it just comes across as like these people seem too young to be in a family.
No, I definitely thought they looked like 30 or 30 like 5.
I didn't buy it. To me, it was definitely like
especially
as soon as they did the flashback, I was like, oh, I understand. They're like cast for this. This is the perfect age for them, and the thing is like that's like a byproduct. But yeah.
Because Art has a scary face that he does, because when the lady holds up the racket that he's on, do you remember this scene?
Yes, yeah.
Art looks so old in that, don't you think?
Yeah, I guess maybe in like promotional stuff, yeah.
And I think in those first scenes, he does look much older and like more mature. And I think Zendaya does too. I think she looks like a MILF, I think.
I don't know. To me, I don't. She is the worst case of it, I think. But
really
maybe it's because I've seen her in other things.
She does look perfectly like 17 in the tennis, in the first scene. I will say that. Not the first scene, but the first the scene where she plays tennis.
Yeah.
There is, because more so I would say the three main actors are cast because they're hot. I think this movie doesn't work at all if these people are ugly. But that's probably the case for most movies, for most people.
I don't even, that doesn't even cross my mind.
Because I think every one of them being really hot is like, I think like we're talking about all this stuff, but the layer one stuff is like the eroticism. I think that's like the driving factor. I think Zendaya's like skirt going up for 3 seconds, or her being in her underwear, moisturizing her knee is like, I talked about this with the vibe stuff, but it's like, that is like the appeal of the movie, is like how like horny it is. Like when,
I don't know.
When they're lying back and they're like, oh, I love that backhand serve or whatever, and then they get into the match and then he grabs his leg. It's pretty horny. That's pretty.
I guess a little bit, yeah. To me, it's like, oh,
but obviously there's like
a relationship. Oh my god,
kissing and everything. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's definitely the. I don't know. It's a very viscerally horny movie, I think. And obviously that plays in the marketing, because the threesome scene was all over it. Which wasn't a threesome scene, but
maybe it was the start of one. But yeah,
that didn't happen.
True, but it started okay.
But yeah, that was somewhere I was going with that, but I forgot.
Zendaya.
True. Oh, yeah, the casting thing. Because there are shots, especially of Patrick's actor, where it's like, this is just for women to come to. Or it's just like, he's like in this, the frame is here, he's in this corridor, his cheekbones look giant, and he's doing this, and he's got a serious face, and he's sweating, and I'm like, I'm coming to this later, and I'm a lady.
I don't know. I don't remember. It didn't stand
and
out.
Art is obviously like a pretty boy kind of too, so... I don't know. I think that's
they're all actors, yeah. Okay, interesting.
True, he says. True.
You go ahead with
do you want to talk more about Zendaya, or?
What is there to say?
I thought some of her lines, and I think I felt it the second time too, at the beginning are a little stilted. You never agree with me whenever I say anything about dialogue, so I definitely don't think you agree with this. But outside of this, first of all, there's the protecting my little white boys line. Did that feel out of place for you at all?
No, I liked it, but I was also primed for it because I remember you saying it.
Okay.
But I liked it, yeah.
Because in my original discussion, I had a whole thing about how this like breaks the movie, but also is the whole point of the movie's appeal or something, and about how it was a vibes thing that I compared to The Godfather, where I was like, how movies like resonate and stuff like that is like purely from like the vibes or the memory they leave. And like the memory of The Godfather is Michael Corleone sitting in a chair administrating and being cool and saying cool things, like inventing that you should keep your friends close but your enemies closer, apparently.
True, very cool.
And so even when the story of The Godfather is pretty... Part 2 spoilers, Larry.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's pretty famously, you're not supposed to think Michael Corleone is the coolest guy. But everybody thinks Michael Corleone is the coolest guy still, and everybody wants to sit there and look cool. It's kind of like the Mad Men Don Draper thing, right? Don Draper is like a serial fuck-up, kind of, in some ways. Another way he isn't. And obviously the silhouette of him sitting there cool in the chair being the most handsome man of all time is sort of the takeaway. in the same vein, I think Zendaya being very sexy in this movie and being very domineering, mean. There's a word in here that means this more so, is sort of the flavor of modernity or something. As in, like, in the Godfather era, we wanted all to be masculine men sitting there administrating. But now it's like the strong, powerful woman with her boy toys rather than the strong, powerful man with two girls fighting over him or something. And how this is like the vibe of the month, and that's sort of the lasting legacy. And Zendaya, and how this is like Zendaya and not the character in a way. Even though I think I've barely seen any Zendaya interviews, but she seems like a sweet little Hollywood girl, not really this mean, domineering girl that Tashi is. Obviously, I don't know fucking Zendaya.
True. Spider-Man, that's all I know.
She is.
And Dune for a little bit.
In Dune, yes. She's the main girl, but she's only in the last bit of the first movie or something, I hear. She's also famously in Euphoria, the main girl, and she's a singer sometimes.
Interesting.
The point being, the vibe thing, where was I up to? The two little white boys is like something I could see like Zendaya saying that I really couldn't see Tashi saying. But like that's the point, bro. Because Zendaya is kind of the movie star of kind of our era right now, right? Is there a bigger female movie star? Like Margot Robbie was Barbie, but outside of that, she doesn't do too much, and she sort of feels like a star from like the 2010s, maybe.
I don't know anything about celebrity people.
I don't know.
Who has the most Instagram following is what I would ask.
She probably doesn't have the, like, singers probably outclass her in that. Like, even in Wicked, right? Ariana Grande is the main girl, and she's already like one of the most famous people in the world and a very popular singer.
So let's see, Zendaya, Katy Perry, older, obviously. Miley Cyrus, older.
Yeah.
Taylor Swift, that's kind of...
She's old, but she's also had a peak recently. So she's in a few movies, actually.
Kylie Jenner's not an actor, right?
No, she's...
Selena Gomez, that's kind of like...
She's an actress.
She has in some
singer.
things, yeah. But that's it. Beyond that is no one, so...
So what did you look up?
Just the most followed Instagram people. And above
Zendaya being up there was interesting.
Yeah.
It supports my point. That very rarely happens, you know. I'm trying to think, because I should know this. Like, who's another very popular... Like, who's in the Marvel movies? Like, I don't know, Brie Larson or Daisy Ridley? She's only really in Star Wars.
Yeah, she disappeared. Who knows?
Who would even the male equivalent be? Like,
maybe like Game of Thrones people, but even then...
Yeah, maybe. Like, well, Emma Darcy's not a woman.
Well, that's House of the Dragon. But...
Well, that's the popular thing at the moment. I don't know, Emilia Clarke solo didn't do too good, right?
She was in Solo.
But anyway, I don't think I explained this vibes point very well in this one. It was probably not explained well in the last one. I think, so the more universal point is that I do think she is probably a good actress in this, which I had my doubts about. There was something else about her portrayal, because we were just generally talking about her.
No idea.
It's probably about her character.
She's tall-ish.
Well, she's taller than Art in the one scene where they kiss, and a lot of people make fun of Art for that, because it's like, oh, he's a simp boy, look, he's short. Or they say he's a bottom, EliteAri, can you believe it? Such sexually charged language. Also, I think, I guess this is kind of probably the point I was getting to. Zendaya as a sex symbol is definitely a thing that happens. Like, she is, along with being a very popular actress, she's a very, like, everybody's like, oh, she's the prettiest girl in the world or whatever. So to have her, I think this is another thing that's been talking, especially because you brought up casting, is that the two dudes are relative unknowns. Like, they've never been in big movies, really. But obviously Zendaya is like as we've just established, the movie actress of our time. So
is this true, or is this like your guess?
I heard somebody say it in a YouTube video, and I'm like, I've never seen him before, so that must be true.
Yep.
The Zendaya thing we just proved with facts and logic.
True.
But yes, what was I saying?
Casting.
Oh, the casting of her, because as like a sex symbol, and obviously Euphoria is another, like, it's like a college, high school. There's lots of sex in that show. It's like so I think she's very much charged for this sort of a vixen type portrayal, I guess, where she's like got these two boys after her and stuff like that. And I think like Zendaya's reputation as being a pretty girl, and I think she's dated a few popular, like she's married to Tom Holland, or they're getting married recently or something I saw. And I think she's dated other ones in the past. So it's like, oh, it's sort of, it's how sort of like the movie reflects culture in this moment and how it resonates. Obviously, if we were to watch this movie even like 5 years down the road, we would probably have no context for this, and most people probably wouldn't. So it doesn't really matter that much. But in terms of the sort of when this movie came out, I think it did have a cultural impact in this sort of online media space. I think it's mostly because of these reasons. And it just happens to be a really good movie. So do you have other notes? Or what's
I have two other notes, basically, but they're not very substantial. So one was just we've already talked about this a little bit, which is the dynamic after the injury, where you're being kind of deceived as an audience because what happens is that Tashi and Patrick get in a fight initially, and that's the reason he's not there at the place where she gets injured. And then Art shows up and is the supporting person there, who has been trying to get with Tashi up to this point.
They even have a scene where they're biting the Cheerios, and he's like, "I know you're trying to steal my girlfriend.
Yes.
I'm like proud of you or something."
Yeah, but then when we get to the scene where they're in the injury hospital place, whatever, where as an audience we're siding with Art here. Because we're like,
what?
I'm pretty sure, because in that scene, you're like, he was there for her.
No.
Really?
I wanted to kill him.
Okay,
that makes him definingly the villain of the whole thing, that scene.
Okay.
He's weaseled his way in there. He happened to be there at the right moment because of something she did, but now they're both blaming me. So I was very much like, I've been in Patrick's position in this, and I wanted to kill people.
Because I completely agree with you in a logical sense, but when I'm watching the scene, I don't care about that at all. Yeah, I'm completely like, I'm glad he was there. He is yelling for her. I like it. This is good.
Yeah.
But if you think about it and take a step back, obviously, he is the one who is...
No, I feel like it's all emotion for me for that. It's no logic at all.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been, and not even just in relationship stuff, but I feel like I've been in that scenario in family stuff or something where it's this, he clearly, can everybody not just see that he just weaseled in here and he doesn't actually care about this and he's just saying this to look impressive in front of her. The problem is Art actually does care, and he's this bleeding heart little simp boy, and it's pissing me off. And I'm getting in trouble for having a backbone here because she tried to bully me into whatever, being my coach. And I told her, I just said, fuck off, bitch. And she said, well, kill yourself. And then she got injured and she wants me to be sad? Fuck you. I don't know. It was that's the defining, I think that's, for me, that's why I say that you're on Patrick's side for most of the movie because of after that scene.
Interesting.
Because usually, there is the underdog thing where Art is kind of the underdog and you're like, oh, okay. And you're also framed to think of him with her because that's what we see at the beginning. Yeah.
I'm very curious if I go back and rewatch it, because this was one of the dynamics where I wasn't sure if there was what was happening here.
Yeah.
In terms of the cheating and history and all that. So I don't know. I'd want to, maybe if I rewatch it, I would agree, but definitely not right now.
It's also a thing of obviously you look like the bad guy, but that's not the case thing that sets you off in that scene if you're in Patrick's shoes. Where it's well, obviously it looks like I wasn't there for her when she got injured, but little do you fucking know that she was mean to me first.
Yep.
No, I just remembered a little example from my personal life about this, actually. That's very funny. We hate him.
So true. Okay, I have one.
It's almost the I don't know, controversial thing. It's literally the thing Destiny talks about all the time, right? Where he's like, you can never compete with the guy that wants to weasel in.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Because they'll always have time and always be there, whereas you're out trying to be a pro tennis player. And
very true.
It's funny. Descriptively real,
Well, I have one final note. This is it, and then you can talk about.
I haven't read any notes, so
yeah. There's a span of time in this movie, I think mostly toward the beginning, where the movie does some meta comedy. It's weird. And it comes across as cringe, and I was a bit worried for the movie. And I was like, this is going to be a weird comedy
what
thing.
Are you talking
I have three examples. One of them is probably the most obvious, which is when the daughter asks Zendaya if they can watch Spider-Verse. And I'm like, okay. So it's a Spider-Man reference. This is a meta joke here. Right?
Oh, I didn't even think about how she's in Spider-Man.
Yeah, I mean, that's what she's most famous for, I would say. Probably.
Oh, she's not in Spider-Verse, though.
Yeah, exactly. But it's if you mention Spider, obviously you're going to associate her with
I was like, is it a product placement thing? Is this a Sony movie or something?
No, it's the joke, it's a meta joke, okay?
It is a thing. I have seen that little kids really love Spider-Verse, because this is weird, but I related this to this. The rapper, Rico Nasty, is a female rapper. She has a daughter or a son that really likes Spider-Verse, and one time at a concert, she did a Spider-Verse song with her little son or something, and they were dancing on stage. So I was like, oh, black woman with a daughter, and they both like Spider-Verse. I'm like, oh yeah, the kids love Spider-Verse. This is descriptively real. This is a product placement or a Zendaya thingy.
Yeah,
that literally clicked in my head. I was like, oh,
that's crazy.
The kids love Spider-Verse. This is the director was sitting with a kid one time, and they wanted to watch Spider-Verse.
Amazing.
There is this is a stupid aside. There is a you can't win doing that scene where it's specifically if you mention a movie's name. Because there's first of all, if they're if it is a product placement thing and it's we can say the name because we own the thingy, right? So then I could see, and I was specifically imagining YMS, the YouTuber right now, being like, this is disgusting product placement. Because I remember he complained about that in The Amazing Spider-Man when Peter Parker has a Sony phone. And he's like, this disgusting movie with the product placement or whatever. Nobody has Sony phones. So it's like it takes you out almost because you think about that. And then the alternative is just like, oh, it's weird that you said another movie in a movie thing. I feel like this is always like something that's going to take you out of the experience.
No, that never bothers me.
Yeah, I was like, oh.
The only thing that really took me out of it was firstly the Zendaya thing, but also like the mentioning a movie thing is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Because I don't feel like, I don't know.
Movies don't do that to
Sony
you.
made the Spider-Verse stuff, and I don't know if this is like a Sony thing. I have no idea. It was a bit weird. I assumed this was an Amazon
like an indie
thing.
movie, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that was the first meta comedy thing. The second one is, I don't know, it's a bit harder to argue. It's not necessarily meta comedy in the same way, but it's when there's this, I assume, gay couple who's going into the motel place or hotel place.
Yeah, that was very good.
And they're complaining about the online listing being
looking
inaccurate.
different.
And you need to update the thing. I'm like, this is a meta joke for the audience to realize and be like, we relate to this because it's like.
No, I thought it was supposed to be, aren't they so gay? This is like what a gay couple would do.
Oh no, I didn't think of that at all. I just thought like, oh, the movie is making fun of like.
It's like all the catty gay guys are complaining that it doesn't look too good. But also, it's the receptionist was also like getting mad for like at Patrick for not having a card or something, but she's also being deceptive because she's got like fake pictures up. So it was like
that's not at all the point. But yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah. Okay, and then the last one is when it's like it's weird because the movie's not a comedy otherwise. But it's when I don't remember who's in the car. Someone's in a car, maybe Tashi or something, and there's a schizo ramble about some Clinton conspiracy thing.
Sure.
And I'm like,
no, it's when Patrick pulls up to to the country club. Yeah, it's like, and the Clintons gave him. I was like, oh, that is true. That's funny.
Yeah. So and then after that, there's no more. Like it's done. All the jokes are done, and I'm like, oh, okay.
It's funny sometimes, but not. Yeah.
Yeah. That was kind of It makes me wonder if they were like how was the writing of this movie? Like, was it split into like are there multiple writers or something? And one wrote like this first half
I'm
or
on
something?
the crew right now. I'm pretty sure. No, it just has one writer. It's not the director guy. It's Justin something.
All right, cool.
I'm trying to figure out how I would find out if it's a Sony movie or not, but I don't. Like if you're on details or something. Pascal Pictures.
Crazy.
Trenzy Metro Golden Mayer, which I think is a Sony competitor. So I don't know why we're referencing a Sony movie unless
maybe they just got the rights.
The director is a great fan of Rico Nasty like me and put that in the movie. He also wrote wrote Queer. So okay, they're a little pair, but that's the only two movies he's written. So it's crazy. Did you say you had one more note?
That is all my notes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we probably talked about a lot of this stuff. So I'll try to breeze through it relatively quickly. First of all, I have like the love trial thing. Tashi loves tennis. Art loves Tashi. Patrick loves art. Descriptive realism is the name of the game. And they say clever things and not knowing where things are going. I talked about all this. There's so many one-liner mic drops that aren't allowed to be because it isn't a movie music. Subtle relationship-ness is fucking incredibly written, especially in the first Art and Tashi scene. Oh, this is true. So this is when they're in the hotel room. Their interactions there are very like right on for me. Where it's like she's like, I guess it's like.
You mean when they're younger, right?
No.
Oh.
But they're in the hotel with the kid after he's lost the tennis game. Or even some of it's before. I think no, it's all afterwards actually. The where it's like the slow negging, where it's like and Art not reacting to it. It's like she's like, you could like sitting there and we could do this thing, or you could fucking play tennis, you piece of shit. But obviously she doesn't say it too extreme, and that's like the nuance in the writing that I really like. And then him just like. Because Art's like this little cuck boy, as we're gonna come to know, which he's not because of this. He could just be like, but I don't wanna, and something. But he just like looks at her like stoically. I'm like, I've been in that, looking at her stoically annoyed, not gonna say anything position a million times. And it's obviously something you see in relationships a lot. The knowing how to strongly concede thing is really good. Tashi does this a lot, where she like says, okay, we can do that, but then she adds a little thing at the end, so it's sort of like a thingy. Also Tashi giving into the what he wants is very traditionally woman, but also handled in this way. So there is another, and this we sort of talked about this in Nosferatu too, and I think I said, we'll talk about this in challenges, where it was like part of it is because obviously there's maybe if this was a more traditional movie written by a man in the 90s or something, Tashi would obviously be the bad guy because she's cheating. And then there's like the more feminist movies, like, I don't know, whatever people say Captain Marvel is, where it's like, she does everything and she's great. And even if she's not moral, she like wins everything. She's like, it's like the Mary Sue thing, where it's like, in the context of this movie, she tells him off and she's correct and then he does it. But rather than that, this movie is sort of straddling the line between those two things, but also like asking the question is like, is she in a position where she's a woman where she has to like placate him and his ego to get him to do what she wants? And then who's like morally at fault there is also an interesting question. Is it like him for being, what do you call it, strong-headed or whatever, and leaning on patriarchy or something? Or is it her because she's being deceptive, but she only has to be deceptive because of sort of these relationship dynamics that are normalized because of patriarchy, something. So it's sort of like straddling the line, and I guess it's very morally ambiguous if you want to talk about morality in relationships, I guess. So yeah, and sort of like there's also in a lot of literature like this or movies or stuff, this is another mad thing or whatever, where it's like, do you want to portray a strong woman to a fault, or do you want to have her like dresses and also like traditionally female stuff, like even like gender roles? Like, does she sometimes want to be told what to do or something, because that's how women have traditionally worked? It's sort of like Mad Men specifically, usually this is like done with the career versus personal life, right? Where it's like, oh, a show might portray a successful career woman, but she's so sad because nobody loves her or something. And it's like, see, you should have had a family because you became a lawyer and now nobody loves you or something. And then there's the other way of like, oh, she gets everything and she succeeds. A lot of the time it's like, Mad Men will show like the women's with families all depressed want to be careers, the women's with careers all depressed want to have families, and it's sort of like a commentary on you're not really going to be happy because of decisions. So in that sense, it's sort of like it's with the portrayal thing of like Tashi is both of them, and it's sort of a nuanced thing, and it's sort of like which one should she be, but she's also both. So an example of this is like, obviously, even though she never became a pro tennis player, she's like seemingly one of the most famous people in tennis in the world. But then there's like the double thing of like, oh, is she just seen as like this guy's wife? And obviously that's like a thing people don't want to be seen as. But then it seems to not be, and everybody seems to know her, and they're still asking for her autograph too when they go places, etc. It's just, I don't know. I've run out of my conclusion here. But there is like a middle ground where she like lives in, and it's very interesting because she gets to play both sides in certain positions. Like she's strong a lot and she's mean. And I think if you ask people, like their general impression of the character would be like a strong character. But then there's moments, especially with Patrick, where she becomes like a total like little girl. Like I think in the end of the car, they literally say, "You're stupid, no, you're stupid." Back and forth. And it's like, oh my God, they literally are like teenagers who are in love but won't admit it. But they aren't really. And it's like, oh, it's like people are fluid like this. Like you are both. Like if you run into like a 25-year-old guy, he's going to be like, oh, he is like mature in some ways and an adult in some ways. But then in some ways, he's just like a little kid. And it's like, oh, like which way do you want to be seen as? Which way are you seen as? Which one are you more often? Which way is your like true internal self? This is all like basic like character fleshing out stuff. Anyway, I don't know if I said anything. Calling him a pussy all the time, but it's not in the way a red pillar would tell you it was. So this is a funny thing because my girlfriend does this, where it's like, it's not like you get beaten up at a bar and then she comes up to you and says, "You fucking pussy," I'm spitting everywhere, EliteAri, and says, "You should have beaten him up," or whatever. It's never that, but it's like, it's when they're practicing and he won't actually practice with her because he's worried about her knee. And it's another thing where you're like, you're obviously in the right. And she calls you a pussy, and it does infuriate you in the moment. You're like, you're incel baiting right here. You're like, if I was a bad guy, I would be flipping out at this and I would like be mean to you, but like, I'm not going to be, but I'm still just fucking myself over. And the thing is like, she knows she's doing it too. And she's like taking advantage of this situation to be able to like try and get what she wants. But she also doesn't really want him to go hard because obviously she doesn't want to get injured, but she's just being stubborn because she's mad. It's sort of like the mad is the thing. And I don't know, the specifically pussy is like a word.
I do know what you mean,
It's great, because it's like, a terrible story would be like, oh, quit being a pussy, Art, and how about you man up or something, but it's always like, you won't do what I want, pussy. And it's like using the sort of toxically masculine tropes to try and get what you want, even though you would say, obviously, that was a bad thing. But it's like what you want comes first, which is true. I guess a more general question is sort of character motivation wise, it's to backtrack almost to the beginning. Do you think she ever loved Art in any way, or does she just love him because he's an outlet for her to still be in tennis? And does she love coaching him? Because I think I've almost come to the conclusion that that's true, that she doesn't really love him at all. But part of me wants to believe that she's just grown to sort of be disgruntled with him, because Patrick says that at one point when he confronts her outside, when he's like, is that why you hate him or something? And she's like, I don't hate him, but it's clear that she kind of does sometimes. And he sort of offers
Yeah.
the lifeline of why don't, like, I actually want this and I will like listen to you if you want to be my coach. And also it's a great callback because he didn't want her to be his coach originally and that's why they broke up. But for him to come back and ask it now makes her very angry and she slaps him. But then she takes the piece of paper and might have done it. There is a lot of things like that where she is allowed to be like she is very strong in the scene where she basically breaks up with him before her match. But it's clear that she's very sad about that situation later with how she reacts to him. And especially when like they're in the car and stuff and it's clear that like he gets to her in a way that art really doesn't.
Yeah, so what I was going to say is that usually to demonstrate love in a movie, you would have people spending time together. Doing things or having fun or having a good time to be like, look, I associate this person with
No one's having
memories.
a good time ever.
Yeah, there are no scenes like that in this, like, unless I'm forgetting. There's no like, oh, they go on a date or maybe the one scene where they're like,
that's
at the
where they
window.
kiss. Yeah.
Wait, where they kiss? What do you mean?
Well, right, they have the date here where she's like, "Oh, you never said if you're still in love with me or something," and they're literally like, it's framed like this. It's like and then they go outside and they kiss, and like the guy puts the stuff in the bin and interrupts.
Oh yes, sure.
So that's like a date scene.
Yeah,
It's kind of positive.
Yeah, but that was with Patrick, right?
That was no, this was art.
Am I crazy? Oh my god.
I don't think she ever has a date with Patrick.
Wait, what is the? Okay, wait, I'm mixing it up. I thought you meant that's the scene where they're in the car.
No.
Okay.
So this is in a flashback scene. This is after she's injured and she started coaching a girl, and he has a different coach, and she's like saying, "Oh, you should do this."
Yes. Okay.
And then they sort of have a cute moment, and they go outside, and he says, "Oh, I want to kiss you right now." Or something.
Yep. Okay. Well, there we go. They're in love. Okay, they had one scene in this movie where they were having quality.
But
time
it's
together.
still all art stuff, and that's the first time she brings up how she wants to coach him, and then she's like, "Oh, maybe okay, I'll kiss him. Like he's good looking and stuff. I guess I'll be with him if I get to be a coach." Because she even says at the beginning of that scene, like, "You have a lot of potential," which he didn't really believe up until that point about himself. Like, didn't think he was like a good tennis guy or that good.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know. It's definitely like the movie is highlighting like the miserableness in relationships and like the negging, and I guess that's like a trope how that leads to like sex and stuff, like a movie scene where they say I hate you, and then they kiss him like the fucking Vegeta and Bulma in DBZA or something. And I think there's like is the negging and the arguing just flirting or something like that. But yeah, and also I think some points, especially in relationships, it comes down to like feelings rather than positive feelings, where it's like I think that's sort of part of why that's seen as flirting to a lot of people, is like, oh, like being around other people is just boring, but like this person really riles me up or whatever, and that leads to affection in a way. I don't know.
No, yeah, that makes sense.
It's better to feel hatred than nothing at all, or something they say about your movie character when you're making EliteAri. If you're just indifferent to them, like that shitty Qui-Gon Jinn, we hate it, but at least we can hate the great Anakin, or something. What were we talking about?
Palpatine, yeah. You know, we're just talking about love. That's basically
love. What is love?
Yeah.
Are you ever gonna get love in the moment?
Anyway, yeah.
Should I go through mine?
I got nothing else. So, yeah.
Relationships, the nagging stuff, calling him a pussy. That's how we got here. The moment in the rally of ultimate lock-in and how that's the only thing worth living for besides love. Oh, so this is Zendaya and the girl and her screaming at the end. I don't know. I felt this sometimes wrestling. It is like, I don't know. It is like the defining thing to life for me, I guess, is these sort of moments of, and it's hard because I think that part of the point of this movie is like, oh, obviously filmmaking is a craft, and I'm sure on days you like have this moment when you're filmmaking where everything comes together and it looks great, or you're editing something and it all comes together. I think part of the point in the movie is that it takes like 15 years for her to have that moment again, and it's sort of like the sad part of her life, right? So it's like, and I think that's part of life, is like these good, like these actually good moments where you like feel alive in a sense, sort of happen. Like it might be a year or even more between them, but it's sort of like, oh, that's, I guess, part of what makes them good, or just, you know, keep believing. You'll get another one eventually. I think that is very powerful, and I think it is because it's paired. It's both very visceral, where it's just like literally her screaming, but it's also like she does have an explanation of it, of like, oh, we were like connected for a second, because there are like weird, I don't want to call them spiritual things you feel like that sometimes, where it's just like, oh, like I guess it is like the finishing your sentences thing or something, where that's not really a thing that happens too much, but like when you are on the same wavelength, it's like, it's romantic in a sense, but not lovely, like lovingly. It's just sort of like like everybody understood in this moment. It's like a moment of clarity almost, or something like that. I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's like euphoria or something.
That's a good one.
Zendaya's in that. And it's a momentary, and it's like, oh, that's because I feel like people say that. Like I've seen in documentaries when people finish movies, and they're like, they have a moment where they see somebody like 2 years later, and they like, it's a kid that loves the movie, and they say, that's why you make movies. And it's sort of like the payoff is eventual, and it's usually not in the way. Because a lot of times, and I even did this when I would build up like moments and be like, oh, this is like the payoff to something, and like everything will be worth it if I get to that moment. And obviously, if you dedicate your life to something, you get to that moment and you don't feel it. And especially when you think about like how temperamental feelings are, it's like you could achieve the goal, but you could like wake up wrong that morning and then not be as present for that moment as you want, and then you've ruined your life because you've dedicated 15 years to making it to this moment or something. It's like, it's probably bad to put all your eggs in that basket of like, I want to achieve this thing, because if you get there and it's miserable, then you're probably going to kill yourself. I don't really know if that's what's being said here, but it is like the long walk between drinks. There's a line, they say that in football all the time, long time between drinks or something. Anyway, the rally moment. Art likes to compliment Tashi, but Patrick likes to get her to talk about them. This is a little thing in the flirting on the beach scene. This is another thing where I guess it's also smoothness, where it's like Patrick is sort of the smoothest, suavia guy, but Art isn't. Because an interesting thing with the characters would obviously to have them be opposites. Like Art is actually passionate, but he's not as clever, and therefore it doesn't come across. But Patrick is the opposite, right? He's clever, but he's not as passionate. But it's usually not that, and they flip sometimes, and they're in between. Like Art has a line in there where it's like, oh, when you hit the winner, and the way he says it, it's like really inquisitive and interesting. And I could see that like resonating. And I think it also, them both being smooth and pretty is sort of like, you sort of buy why she would be interested in going to their room or whatever. So yeah, I think the lack of genericism, I guess, is an appeal here. Art kind of something. I have a quote here. That was it. To talk to her again would feel too desperate. Oh, this moment is great. This is another when you're at like a party and you built something up or something and you just want to talk to the one person, and then you do have an interaction, but it doesn't go too well, and you're like, oh fuck. This happened to me at work a lot, where it's like I save it for the end of my shift and I go talk to that person, and then it's like, oh, and then something gets, and it's just like a fuck up, and you like talk for 3 seconds, and then you got to move on or something, and then you're like, oh fuck. There's no reason why I can like be here still to try and talk to her again. Like, what the fuck is gonna, like, I have to leave. Like, my shift's over. It'll seem like, well, it wouldn't seem like creepy or weird. It would just seem like it would be obvious what you were trying to do, and like unsubtle, and that's scary. That was a very interesting moment. But then there is moments, because they do get to talk to her again. There is moments where you feel like that, and then it comes back around, which is very funny that they like accomplished both. Descriptively real, you know, you're gonna love it. She's not scared to go down to the beach with them. She's not scared to go to their room is an interesting thing. Obviously, 2 dudes, you don't want to be in their room if you're a little girl, but obviously she's like in control and stuff, and she's cool. An interesting little bit of characterization is that Patrick's parents are rich, even though he like is cosplaying as like a poor guy constantly. And Zendaya calls him out for this, because Zendaya's family was like poor. That's a very interesting thing of like, it's almost like a self-hatred thing. And I guess you could probably tie that into repression somehow. Which it seems like they're both walking to. They're repressed at least by feelings. But they did teach each other to jerk off, EliteAri. Wasn't that a great little ending?
That is true. Yep.
EliteAri, very relatable to you, right?
Not at all.
Crazy. These, what do you call it? These boarding school boys.
I think if in that particular scene, there was a really cool, relatable thing, which is, well, not even was relatable. Maybe just the description.
When she knocks on the door?
No. Okay. It's the, she's like, oh, well, actually, no. Okay,
when they flip back over her and
no. I thought this was relatable because I thought I know where the scene was going, but it went somewhere else.
Oh, okay.
So initially, where she's like, oh, my drink is out, we need more drinks. My interpretation was that, oh, okay,
one
someone has to get the drink, and neither of them wanted to get up.
Yeah,
but no, it was just an invitation for like the sitting on the bed or whatever, I think.
There's also an interesting thing when she sits on the bed and she's obviously inviting one of them over at least. And I think Patrick gets up first and then Art has to follow. Is very cute. And then she kisses him first, and then it's all like very like, it's like, oh, which one's she gonna go with type. Like I felt that tension a lot. It's very interesting.
Good scene.
But yeah, it's sort of like the subtle, there's literally a Mad Men scene like that too. Where it's like the subtle, like unsaid sort of like And a lot of positioning in life is like that, where it's like nothing is said explicitly. You've just sort of got to like, and this isn't like in relationships or sexual situations. It's just like you've got to like not leaving is like half of the battle somehow. It's like if you're just around, then things are going to happen. But especially with me, like if there is not like an explicit point that I can like excuse my being here, I will not be here. Like going back to like the work example, if there's not like a question work related that I've come up with to somehow pretend that that's why I'm coming to talk to this person, then I can't talk to this person and I've got to leave. And if we exhaust that conversation immediately, very rarely am I going to transition into like a different topic.
Sure.
It's like, oh, there needs to be an excuse so it doesn't look weird, even though probably this is just like awkwardness things. Like people want to talk about a thing, but they can't because they can't. Like neither one of them wants to say it first. And it's not. And sometimes it's not even a like, oh, what if they don't want to talk about it? It's just a literally like it's too awkward. I don't know how to get to the conversation type awkwardness. Interesting stuff. I have another Tashi line written down here where she tells Patrick, "You're not a tennis player because you don't know what tennis is," and this leads into the them talking about the rally. Which is interesting, where it's like, again, it's almost a passion thing. Because Patrick just says tennis is a good way to not have a job or something, which seems to be his case. Like he's literally broke. Tennis isn't doing him anything, but he doesn't have to have a job because he makes $7,000 if he wins a challenger every 2 months or something. EliteAri makes that much in 2 days.
That's not true, but
what was my point there, EliteAri? Why didn't you let me make a joke? Tennis player, you're not
getting a job.
He's not really passionate about it. And in a funny way, Art isn't either, right? He's like only in it really because Tashi wants him to be into it. But she is very,
oh my god.
Yes, he does. She does. She is very passionate about tennis, but maybe only because she sees it as an outlet of like this like meaning of life energy thing.
I mean, there's the line where she's like, she doesn't just want to be known for tennis. She wants to have like the thing in the school or whatever. But
then she calls it. Then Patrick calls her out for that. It's like, no, it's just like a marketing thing because you want it to make it look like you care about your education. It would be interesting if there was a line later where it was like after she hurt herself, she dropped out of college or something. That would be very funny. I don't know if that's the case, or if there's any indication about that.
Well, there's a line later on that she references, and she's like, "Oh, I ended up just being tennis or something, right?" Like
the only thing I know how to do is hit it. But that's when she's on the date with Art in that one scene you forgot about. Okay. But that's because she's coaching and stuff. But yeah. Anyway, that was cute. Ultimate understanding between each other in the moment. We went somewhere really beautiful together. Oh, and then this is the Art line that I thought was cute where he said, "You screamed." Like he was paying attention to her and she was like, "Oh yes, I recognize this moment." It was just a good piece of that. Art is still cool and can make her blush, is what I have written down here. He's not just a little cockboy. He's asking for your number and so am I is another thing Art said, which was more direct than what Patrick was doing, which was another interesting thing because you'd think Art wouldn't be the direct one. I'm not a homewrecker. We don't live together. It's an open relationship is a line you talked about.
And all good.
A new dot point is life is about moments of feeling and some. Oh, this is just the stuff I've already talked about. I even have the long drinks thing written down here. It's funny how it's framed at the beginning that Art gets everything and Patrick is down on his luck. She kisses Art first, I guess. But as the movie progresses, it becomes more of an even / Patrick on top thing until it all coalesces at the end. I think we've already talked about that. Egoism, which is, I just mean as having a big ego, not whatever the philosophy term is. And you can't beat, this is sort of the grass is always greener thing, where it's like the framing of this, because you're trying to figure out like who would get made fun of in reciting this situation to like a YouTube audience or something. Who would they call the loser or the cuck in this scenario? It's sort of a funny thing because obviously this is something that happens with insecurities in your head, where the framing just depends on if you're happy or not. So it's like, is Art getting Patrick sloppy seconds, or is Art stealing his girl? Like, because that's cool, but sloppy seconds isn't cool. And is Art a cuck for like losing for the cheating later, or is Patrick the cuck because he lost his girl? It's just like I'm almost certain both of them are insecure about both of them being the loser. And it's always like the grass is always green on the other side, because also there's this is very much a Patrick and Art thing. Like Art ends up dating her, but Patrick like was with her first. So it's like is the thing that makes you feel good that you slept with her first and that he doesn't know I slept with his girl? Or is it that you get the girl in the end? And it's sort of like do you just view women as like objects that you have sex with and then get to brag about, or do you actually care about them and stay with them? And there's also like a tennis thing, right? Like Art has never beaten Patrick, but Art's also won all these great trophies, right? And he's obviously the much better tennis player. Now, Patrick's probably like, man, fuck, this idiot's doing everything. But in Art's head, there has to be an insecurity about like, sure, I did all that stuff, but I couldn't beat that. And I feel like about that, like I don't know if I don't think I had a YouTube moment like this, but it's like, maybe you're like a small YouTuber and you're with someone else that's a small YouTuber, but they like beat you in an argument or something. They get a zinger in on you. And then you go on to have 1 million subscribers or something, or 9,000 subscribers or something. But you're still like, man,
that guy
in that moment, he was the winner. And now he's gone. And, you know, and you just think about that. I think I probably have that with my, like, with little athletics a little bit when you're like racing and like when you're like 6, he beat you 1 time. Even if you beat him like 7 times after that, it's still like, man, if I could just go back to that one day and win. But obviously, if you were to look at it from the other perspective, obviously they would be more upset than you are, but it would still get to you. It's just like insecurity will lead to insecurity. And like, that's the problem, is like an inconfidence in yourself that leads to these excuses that aren't really what it's about. But also this is a framing thing, right? If somebody dislikes you, they're going to be like, cuck, he used to fuck your girl. But if it's the other way, it's going to be, haha, you lost your girl. He stole your girl, bitch. And it is funny that that's mirrored in the tennis thing of like, Art having never beaten him. I think there was more I wanted to say about this. Let me just do this. In the world, you'll still want to kill yourself because you can't be that one guy that gets to you, getting caught up in the politics of the moment rather than legacy. Oh, this is also true where people can get caught up. Oh, this is another conversation where it's like legacy versus the moment validation of like, even, I don't know, you don't have a reference to this, but like in the Drake versus Kendrick Lamar beef, right? Kendrick Lamar is like, at the moment, he's on top of the world. But Drake is a better selling artist than him and always has been and probably will be after this. But in this moment, and this moment is like slipping away because obviously all that happened like a few months ago. Like Kendrick Lamar, like everybody is like Kendrick Lamar's the greatest. But in the future, there's obviously, I don't know, you could relate this to the prequels or something. Like in the moment, the prequels suck or whatever. But now in retrospect, they're like loved again. So it's sort of like, you can't really concern yourself with legacy because legacy is like fake and it's relative to whatever the people want to think at the time, and it's usually not the facts of the matter that matter. It's usually whatever the narrative they're trying to push that this will like feed into. So again, it's like, it's stole your girl / you're the cuck. It's like if you're depending on which one you want to insult. It's just like I don't know. You can't get caught up in there's something it's not coming out here, where it's like the legacy versus the in the moment thing. Like in the moment, it might feel like the world is falling down and that nobody will ever consider it. And everybody knows right now that Kendrick Lamar beat Drake and nobody would even question it. If you question it, you'd be a contrarian loser. But in the future, people reflecting on it might just be like, they might not even know about it and be like, oh, Drake, the great Drake, he never did anything. He's the greatest of all time or something. And it's just like, there will be people, and I do this sometimes with like discourse where I'll be like, but back in the day, we used to say this and like, so you're like a hypocrite, but it's like these are different people, they've moved on. I think this is even the case with like Donald Trump stuff where it's like, oh, the people that used to hate on him in like 2016 were probably his fans now just because they got older, and it's like time is like linear and it doesn't matter, and the only time you can be in is the present because the past doesn't matter because it only matters as much as you remember it, and like the future will matter differently, and like every time is going to be the past sometime. I don't know. Weird little, I don't know, societal shit. The teenager thing and the grass being green on the other side. Oh, with the thingy is also like the guys, there's like a meme saying that people say in high school and in high school movies of like, oh, the Giga Chads, they fucked all your wives in high school, bro. What are you going to do about that? Because it's like the nerdy guy and he got a job or something and now he's rich and now the girls, like those same girls live with him now. It's like, oh, he's going to be insecure because the Chad guy in high school used to sleep with him. But the Chad guy is like, got like 3 divorces and has no money and wants to kill himself and is on drugs or something. And it's like, well, you probably shouldn't be insecure about that. But also in that moment, they were like the guys on top. So in the moment, they were perceived as that, and it's like later on. But does it matter? Because she will remember him in that moment, et cetera, et cetera. It's like an insecurity thing you can play out. And it's like, neither way is going to make you happy, and neither way is going to have like a victor. But it's all about self-perception. I feel like I've said the same thing 7 different ways now.
Yeah.
the cheating is never as evil as you think. The grandmother thing is, this is another interesting thing, right? It's just another like internal insecurity thing where it's like, when you think about like getting cheated on or something, it's always like the worst thing in the world, but it's usually not. Because if you think about anything you've ever done, you've never done something perfectly, but in your head, like the cheating is like perfect and like he's so suave and he comes in and he sweeps her up and it's like great. But it's probably he sucks and like she's just annoyed and something. It's like the romanticizing of it. And obviously we see it in this where, it's so cute. He walks past the window, right? We're on this scene, is what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And he's wearing the shirt that she wore when she broke up with him. And it's one of their shirts,
I don't even
obviously.
remember that. Okay, yeah.
It's a shirt that says, "I told you so," or something. And he's like wearing it like 8 years later, and he walks past her, and obviously it might originally have been her shirt or something. Probably not if it fits him, right? So it's probably originally his shirt, but she was wearing it sometimes, but now he's wearing it too, and it's like, oh, he still thinks about me or something. And also the biggest gut punch is like the grandma thing, where it's like at the beginning he's like pleading with Patrick. Of like,
he's gonna watch in
the grandma's gonna watch me and she's gonna die soon or something. And then she did die, and like for her to bring up that like, oh yeah, my ring kind of sucks because it was his grandmother's, and now I'm gonna cheat on him. It's like, it's literally what you would envision the worst possible cheating to be. Like, she hates you, she's shit talking you, and she's fucking the other guy. But it's not. It's still like grounded and not that bad. Like it's just a stupid thing, and it's not glamorous or anything like that. And it's like a one-time thing and she doesn't leave you, et cetera, et cetera. It's just like because cheating is a very hard thing for people to wrap their minds around logically in any like facet. And it's pretty clear, like when somebody's being cheated on, that they like hold these scars forever and stuff like that. It's like a lot of like, especially, this is usually a thing with girls where they're like, cheating is the absolute worst thing a human being can do. It's absolutely terrible just because it made them feel bad, right? And it made them feel really bad. And those emotions are as true as anything else, but it's just like, very funny. And it's like a glamorizing, and the other effect of like, monogamy probably shouldn't be this thing we hold in such regard, but our feelings will never let us not. Girls take the hat off their boyfriend. And it's a cucking triangle, EliteAri. This is such a clever scene. So they're in the corner, right? And they're drinking. Patrick and Zendaya are in this scene, the same one we're talking about.
Okay.
And then Art comes downstairs and he sees them for a second, but then this girl like grabs the hat off her boyfriend's head and gives it to him and is like, "Oh, Mr. Art, I love you so much." And he signs it. So it's like a cuck triangle of like, Art like feels like shit right now because he's getting cheated on. But this guy also feels like shit because it's a very common thing for like girls to be really into celebrities. And like, it's a pretty, I don't know, with a certain type of girl, especially, it's like they're in love with Harry Styles. They have been since they're 15 and they will just openly talk about it in like front of their boyfriends or whatever. And it's like a very insecure male thing. And it's like it's almost like seen as an illogical thing, like a defining, like in the way a woman might get cheated on and have those scars forever, like a guy that could happen to him and he'd have the scars forever, where he's like, man, these girls, they don't actually love you, they just want to go uphill, they just want to, what did the red pill say, EliteAri? It's like, starts with an M or something. No, hypergamy or something. Yeah, hypergamy. But they just want the bigger one and they're just with you because that's all they can get.
High value male.
Yes, and they just all want to be with Harry Styles. This girl just wants to be with Art, but Art is currently getting cheated on because his girlfriend doesn't want to be with him. And it's just like everybody, you can't worry about this. Everybody's getting cucked in a sense. Just fuck them. Literally. Girl takes over, and it's all about perception. It's not about tennis, is a quote I have here. I have no idea what I meant by that. The knee scene. Okay, so this is actually a scene that I didn't like as much this time, that I thought was the most profound thing ever the first time. I don't remember if you remember me talking about this, but it was a scene where Art kisses her knee, is what I thought it was. It actually literally doesn't happen. Well, kind of. It's when there's a narrative through line here, which is a very interesting thing on the I can't tell what's going to happen sphere, where you kind of like, you're thinking about this and you're like, this is a complicated movie, these are complex characters. It can't just be that it is all about tennis for Tashi. And then it sort of climaxes in this scene where he's like, tell me it doesn't matter if I lose or whatever. And she says, what do you want me to say? Like, I think she just says no. And the way they deliver these lines is so like, it's like a couple talking. And she says, and then eventually she's just like, what do you want me to do? And then she just realizes that I think what he needs to hear is that, yes, I will leave you if you don't win tomorrow. And she just does say it. And this sort of climaxes in him sort of whimpering, and then him like cuddling her and saying, you should just hold me until I fall asleep or something. And he slowly like kisses up her arm, and then he starts kissing her, and it looks like they're gonna have sex, but that's clearly not what he wants. And she starts to realize that, and she's like feeling on him. It's cute. It's a clever little scene. And then eventually he's like, she's like, it's hard. She's like sitting like this, right? The knee is all the way over here, right? Her injured knee.
Yeah.
And he starts over here and he starts kissing up here and on the neck, and then they kiss, and then eventually he like rests on her leg and he like grabs, and the last kiss is like here. And it's right in front of the knee, and he like rubs his hand along the knee, and it's like, oh, it's all about fucking tennis, EliteAri. She hurt her knee, and that's the only reason she's with this guy. And it wouldn't have happened any other way. And it's why he's here, and he's like almost thankful for it. And I remember when he was such a little hypocrite bitch because he cared about her knee so much. But now in retrospect, he's like, I only care about the knee because it facilitates me being with the girl I want to be with, and because that's what actually matters to me. And it's like, and he kissed the knee, and I had this moment. It was like a stand up out of your chair Madoka Magica moment. Where it's like, oh, it's like, what a great little subtle thing.
So
where
what
like,
happened?
The kissing was that. Now, it happened, and I just like forgot about it and watched it the second time.
Yeah.
I was sitting over here. And I was like, oh, I didn't have a moment with it this time. And I was like sad about it. Now, because originally I thought he like had kissed the knee, and he didn't do it. He just kissed above the knee and then touched the knee. But also, I thought he like started there and went the other way or something. And so it wasn't exactly how I remembered. So that sort of set it off. But I've had this situation before where I've literally done this, and I've had like a moment that really impacted me on the first one. The second time it didn't impact me too much. And then the third time it did again. So it's just sort of like maybe it's a context thing. I don't know. But still, it was what a scene. And then obviously it's like a big scene where he's really sad in front of her, and you'd think she would have empathy, but then she goes outside, and it's like, oh, what a great movie. And then we have the scene in the typhoon with the red and stuff. It's the greatest scene of all time. The will they won't they in the scene is great. Her getting in the back seat initially, it's like, I'm pretending you're an Uber, just drive. And then her saying, and then her telling to tell him like, I'm not going to fuck you, Patrick, or whatever. And he's like, you're not? It's very funny. And then them going through it, and then being so honest. And then, oh, the best part is that at the end, he's like, you're a piece of, she calls him a piece of shit, and then you're a piece of shit too, or whatever. And they do the you're stupid thing. And Patrick is like, you love me actually because I'm the only one that sees you for who you actually truly are. And he's like, and then he's like, oh yeah, what's that, Patrick? And he just says, you're a ridiculously sexy woman or something. And she falls for it. And it's like a very, like, I don't know, that is very clever to me. I like that writing. I like that it's also like the deconstructing of that like sort of feminist archetype of like, she's a career woman. She's like the greatest tennis coach ever. She's really mean to him. She has a husband. She's got a daughter. But all she wants to be is like hot. And she buys definitely that he thinks she's hot. And that might have been the only. And that is kind of the thing with Patrick. Whenever he talks about her, he really does just talk about how hot she is. Like at the beginning, he says, "Oh, I'd let her fuck me with a racket or something." And then at some other point, he's like just staring at her, and it's like, there is no necessarily like love thing happening here from Patrick's end with Tashi. And it's interesting that like she wants to be reduced to that almost in that moment. It's like interesting. She's like double faceted. She's not just like the strong character because we need a strong character. Anyway, but then and then we've talked about this a little bit. He comes back and Art's in bed with the daughter, but it's not the like overly wrought dramatic thing it could be. It sort of represents the indifference of the moralizing with all the cheating, etc. Who knows what I meant by that, EliteAri? Saying the sad part out loud softly so it goes over better is so real, bro. That's another descriptively real thing it does. Where it's like, oh, like they say the mean thing, but they say it softly with like empathy and then move on to something else. And it's like, I've done that a million times in every facet. That's like the greatest manipulating tactic of all time. I'm the best. And I think Tashi does it and Art does it. Oh, the priming thing is also good, especially when you have an angry girlfriend, where it's like, you're gonna be mad when I tell you this, but it does work. If you say that first, it does work. It's very funny. I probably use that on you, EliteAri. You're not gonna like this, EliteAri. I don't know. It's just a thing. Is it a manipulative tactic? I don't know.
It's used twice in the movie. Oh my god.
Yes, I think so. The perspective with the ball and there is the representation of the back and forth perspective of who you're positioned to root for. True, because you see it from both sides. So because you also, besides the ball being the POV, because you're getting hit back and forth between the characters, of course. And then there's also POV shots of the guy. Like it's like the rackets here. It's literally a first person shot. So because you're with them. It's your POV this scene. The slap scene is incredible, and Tashi is sad he rejected her in her eyes, ? Which is true, which is funny because he didn't really expressly reject her ever, but she's clearly like mad, like he rejected her, and in her mind she is, because she is overly mean to him a lot of the time, and then it does melt away in all the scenes they have together, where it's clearly like she does like him a little bit. Then my second last note here, later, we're ending soon, okay? Shirt detail. What do you think I meant? Oh, that was the repeating shirt.
Yeah.
Okay. The marketing discourse in Tom Holland. Well, we already talked about that a little. We're done, I think. Oh, yap.
The marketing thing is the craziest thing to me. But I guess I understand.
It's just like the fresh and fit audience, right? They're just mad because a girl would ever have sex without them being present.
But it is like something I had heard about this otherwise movie that I wouldn't have heard about.
It's like a brilliant marketing beat, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Because they had to know that was going to... Well, they probably didn't know. It's obviously scandalous, right? Any sort of sex stuff is that.
But no, it's in a movie.
Oh, yeah. But this is the Mad Men scene too. Like Don Draper gets mad because his wife is an actress and has like a love scene, and he comes in and it's like literally a 60s love scene where they kiss once and then she falls onto the bed, and he's like very mad about this.
It's very silly, but yeah, so be it.
Maybe if you were in that position, you would think differently, EliteAri, or something.
I very much doubt it, but you never know. Okay, well. Anything else?
What a great Kyle Entertainment video, you know? Or maybe I should have made this a Kyle Entertainment video, but I was joking. EliteAri, you got to say something.
Yes, well, thank you for watching.
Tell me why Challenges is a 5 out of 5. Why it got snubbed at the Oscars, EliteAri. You had 13 movies they chose and it wasn't even one of them.
It is pretty crazy.
Shitty Dune 2?
What was it? Yeah, Dune 2 over this is crazy. But I mean, Dune 2 was good.
That Bob Dylan biopic that just came out, who gives a fuck? That one movie everybody shits on, Emilia Pleaser, but I'm primed to like that one, so that one can go. Even Queer, his other movie is nominated, but not this one.
This is I would say is a good candidate for like a Best Picture of the Year.
Anora, Conclave, all nominated.
Yeah, in fairness, I haven't seen the other one, so what am I speaking of? I guess it's one of the best things I've seen this year. So
interesting, because the Letterboxd is only a 3.8, so people don't like it.
It could just be people getting annoyed by the woke stuff. I don't know.
There is. Because I think a lot of more breadtube people do have some sort of problem with it.
Okay, sure.
I can't remember what it was.
Well, I don't. Okay, this is more of a meta thing. The breadtube perspective, I think, has very little bearing on the response.
On Letterboxd, I think it has some bearing.
Maybe. I feel like maybe because I don't know much, but you know much more about Letterboxd. But on the internet, general perception is basically dominated by the anti-woke people. Like in terms of ratings on sites and stuff, it's all like dominated by the hate that it gets due to that group, I guess.
I feel like if you looked at Polite Society, it'd probably have a pretty positive rating, even. But that's just so small that like the anti-woke people are never going to see it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Which I guess Challenges was seen. I don't know. I think people might. There is probably I don't know. I almost watched this with my girlfriend one time. I feel like her takeaway would be like, "What a messy relationship. These people are gross," or something like that. And she definitely would not be a fan of the cheating. I'll tell you that much. But I feel like that would be the average experience, where it would be like. Especially if you're like a dude, like a dudes are retarded, like so they would be like, no, we're geniuses. We love women here. But they would just be like, what a whore. And that would be like what they would focus on. Like, I never want to be with a woman like this. All women are like this. I hate women.
She broke up their friendship. But then they got together despite her.
They were they had their threesome after the credits rolled, EliteAri, and they lived happily ever after.
Yes. Okay, anyway, yes. Thanks for watching. Just say something, all right? Leave a comment, and goodbye.